Geeks Gambit. What is it? Where did it come from? This is a video I've been meaning to do for a while, and if you're interested or curious about where the name came from, stick around, we'll get into it. Back in 1995, my father had an opportunity to purchase a local sports card shop. They did sports cards and Magic the Gathering, whatever that was. He didn't really get it, but he purchased the store and the name came with it. There was actually a secondary store or actually a primary store, and so he was hoping the name brand would carry over. The store was called Sportsmore. It was located in Northeast Ohio, a little town called Menor, Ohio, right there on the border of Menor and Menor-on-the-Lake. Dad, as far as I knew, was never a sports card guy, but we were big into comics. He'd been collecting comics since the 60s, and I was doing shows with him for the past 4 or 5 years. We actually used profits from that to help open the store. And there's a lot of behind-the-scenes stuff dealing with finances and everything there. But now he had a sports card and comic book shop where he could enjoy his hobby and teach his family about business. As with many fathers and sons, we did not always see eye to eye, and a couple of years into it, I left the store. My father and I didn't speak for years. These things happen. Back in about 2012, my son had fallen ill with leukemia. We'd done everything we could over in Arizona. We need to come back to a better hospital. Cleveland has Rainbows Babies and Children and Cleveland Clinic. Huge, awesome hospitals. So we came back home. The idea was that we would get help from family and they would be there to support us. But once I made it back home, I found out that actually my father had taken very ill and he needed help with his business. Well, I was obviously a bit preoccupied with my own stuff, but I tried to help, but man, it turned out he really didn't want help. Stuff happens, flash forward, COVID happens, he ends up in the hospital again, and he does succumb to his previous medical conditions. Nothing to do with COVID, it was time. We went to the store, which had amassed all this stuff and all this product, and we're looking there trying to figure out what to do, and I knew what the will said. The will was supposed to say, but apparently the will didn't exist. My father wanted a family friend, to come in, sell everything, and give my mom a nice big fat check. They couldn't find that will. I told them, do it anyway. And they said, no, you take it over, you figure out what to do with it. This was a great opportunity, but there were problems. And so I had a job, I was doing well, we were recovering from all the medical bills and, all the financial issues with my son's illness, but this was an opportunity, and it was one that wasn't going to present itself again. So the idea was I would come in, start getting things set up, my wife would come over and run the shop while I went back to work my day-to-day breadwinning job. Settled, good, so we started doing that. I get to the point to where this shop looks like maybe it can make a go of it. It had more debt than anything else, but it did have a lot of stuff. We had storage facilities and so much square footage of stuff that it was like, listen, the guy's been collecting since the 60s. We know it's got to be here. But sports and more isn't really our thing anymore. While sports were huge during COVID, we were just a small shop in Menor-on-the-Lake, Ohio. I could not get basketball, baseball. I remember one of the last shipments I got one box of a product. One box. Well, normally that would sell for $125. It was actually selling for like $300, $400. Hey, great profit margins, but you can't do that off of one box. And the final straw was when I had some football coming in. I think it was football. And after it had been loaded on the truck, a very large online retailer had actually reached out to my distributor and paid them enough to shift the shipment and redirect the truck. Yeah, that stuff happened back then. So we made some decisions. We decided we were going to rebrand the store. We were going to move the store. My father had a lot of longtime customers. My father had also made some not friends in the area. It's like, hey, I'm not my dad. It's a new business. We decided to stay with comics. We decided to move over toward more gaming stuff and needed to find a name for it. And so I had a name or two, and I'm doing my website and everything. And every name I was going for was taken, right? I can't even go through all the ideas I had. And, I'm in marketing, so had this and had to make names before. And every tool I had, every idea I had, everything was failing me. So I sat down in a chair one day, a nice swivel office chair, and literally did the whole spin myself around and close my eyes. And when I opened my eyes, this was the first thing that I saw. You all might recognize that image. The very first variant cover ever, X-Men #1 with Jim Lee. This was hanging up in Dad's office. And that guy was always one of my favorites, right? Of course. But now I'm really big on alliteration. I like it for a lot of reasons. And I had a number of words written down: geek, gaming, hobby, geek, gambit. Is there something there? So then I went and I looked up the definition of gambit because, we know from the character, and most people know him as like a move in chess or a gamble, right? Now look at here. A remark intended to start a conversation or make a telling point, and also a calculated move. Both those seemed to fit perfectly with what we were doing. This was a calculated decision. I wish I had all the info beforehand, but it was as calculated as I could make it at the time. And we were talking about geeky things. It was all about the hobby. It was stuff that would spark a conversation, get people's interest. So that's how Geeks Gambit was born. I reached out to a couple graphic designers I knew. We went and actually purchased and paid extra for rights to a pre-existing design that they would then modify. That's where the Geeks Gambit logo came from. We moved the store to a larger space. Lots of changes happened over a couple of years, but the time finally came to where the store was supporting itself, but it wasn't supporting me and my family. So unfortunately, we did have to close it. The memories of that store and the things that happened, though, continue and stay with me to this day. Everything you see on the shelf was a gift from the shop, right? These were all things from customers and memories from the shop. Yeah. So I miss it. I love it. We had a great, strong, vibrant community. And it took a while after I closed to, come around and decide what I was going to do. I was doing a lot with RPGs beforehand. This has been my passion. One of the things about that store is there was a couple of us that worked there, and we all had our specialties. Matt was huge into comics and manga, so he took care of a lot of the manga stuff because after a while we did get out of comics. I grew up with comics. I knew comics, but that wasn't my passion. I was with the RPGs. And we were probably one of the only stores in the area at the time that carried non-D&D stuff. So that did well for us. I went online and I considered, do I really want to rebrand or anything? And a lot of people that I still communicate with who were part of the store, were part of the community, said, you really should just stick with the name, stick with the brand. So here we are. And that's also where things came from. Like, until I see you again, remember to be well, be safe, and be awesome, both to yourself and one another.